Hello guys, welcome back to the Empty Seats channel, and the Football League season is just a couple of weeks away now, but one club that is more concerned about their future rather than the upcoming Football League season is Charlton Athletic, with all the problems going on there. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Sam Cook from the Charlton Athletic Supporters Trust. Sam, how are you doing?
Very well, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So first of all, with Charlton Athletic, how on earth did we get into this situation that lays before us now?
Yeah, good question. You have to go back a while now at Charlton. So we had Roland Dutchatelet as the owner for a while, right? Belgian chap who owned a few football clubs across Europe. He bought us when we were in another pretty perilous financial situation, and people were ominous about it, like slightly concerned. But at the end of the day, he saved the club, he paid for the new pitch, like things looked good. Then things took a bit of a turn for the worse, shall we say, and essentially, long story short, Dutchatelet was looking to sell the club, which eventually he did to a group called East Street Investments. And all ultimately seemed, again, we got excited, right?
New owners is very exciting.
Supposedly with lots and lots of money, and alongside Nemo was someone called Matt Southall. Matt Southall attended loads of the games, did everything right. It seemed like he was going to be a great chairman, a great part of the club. Then things took another turn for the worse, and it seemed that essentially Nemo and Southall had a very public spat and a public falling out, which you can still look back on and is would be funny if it wasn't such a bad joke for us as Charlton fans. Essentially, long story short, the situation now is that East Street Investments, we're not really sure as Charlton fans who is really involved in it. There have been numerous names such as Chris Farnell involved in various ways. And another main concern is that whilst East Street Investments own the club as such, Dutchatelet still owns the valley. He still owns the training facilities. He still owns the physical assets. And I think from a non-footballing perspective, a non-footballing fan perspective, purely economic business perspective, he essentially owns the club or a very large part of it. So any owner that comes in now, a potential new owner, will have to negotiate with those two parties as opposed to just one, which doesn't make it impossible, but of course makes it more challenging. So there's a chap who has come in now called Thomas Sandgaard. Forgive me, Thomas, if I'm mispronouncing the name, but he's a Danish businessman who seems very serious. Other members of the cast board have been in communications with him. He's been very vocal on socials and with different fan groups and different fans in general. Seems very serious about the bid and to push it through, and that is currently the one that we are very much banking on. Because in short, if that doesn't work out, then we are still very much concerned that we could go the way of Bury or the way of other clubs that have gone through similar tough times.
Yeah, we saw this weekend, kind of bringing it right up to date, fans kind of stormed the valley, if you want to put it that way, leaving £1 on the statue as well outside the ground. What was that all about? What was that to signify?
So that was a general fan protest, right? Just to make our voices heard, as we've been attempting to have our voices heard for a long time now, in both in the media and more widely ultimately, of course, by the owners of Charlton and the EFL as well. The £1 thing was kind of symbolic because the club was bought for £1, right? And it was a nod to the fact that the EFL should probably be a tad more thorough in who they allow to buy football clubs, right? Because if you can come in, swoop in, seem the real deal, and it seems you don't really have to do much to seem the real deal in their eyes anyway, and buy a football club that dates back to 1905 for £1, then that's a bit of a problem in our eyes. And it was a great turnout. Like props to Clive and others for sorting it. I think when I spoke to them the day before, they were expecting 50 to 200 people to show up, and it was easily 500 plus. That money in the end was donated to a local, I think it was hospice or a local NHS branch in Lewisham, and I think they counted about 570 quid or something like that. So really, really good turnout, and the cameras were down there and such. So hopefully that helps get the message home.
That's brilliant work. It does seem like in the last few years for Charlton. I'm a Coventry fan myself, and I remember at the Valley the game with the pigs and the tennis balls being thrown onto the pitch. And it just seems like Charlton have kind of lurched from one disaster to the other. Is that how it feels as a fan as well?
Yeah, I mean, mate, when I was growing up as a, because I've always gone since I was a kid. Like, still go, busier obviously now, but still go as and when I can. But when I was a season ticket holder as a kid, like, they were very much the glory years. I don't think I realised just how much. Like, my granddad that used to take me, and he was there in all our troubles years and years ago, when again we were out of the ground for a while, and then we got the Valley back. So he remembered those days. My earliest memories were Division 1 / Premier League, and Kirbishley in charge, and Chrissy Powell and Scott Parker, and that very much our glory years. And then it seemed, I don't know if we got a bit too big for our boots, finishing 8th and being like, we should be pushing for Europe every year. And then it's kind of gone from there. Like, Pardew inherited a tricky situation, to be fair to him. But we had a string of managers, owners that would just kind of cut that manager if it wasn't working out immediately. Yeah, and then things seemed more promising again for a while with Chris Powell. I think we got the record points total in League One, actually, when we went up that year. And Chris Powell was great, and then obviously again, then it didn't work out so well. So yeah, very much a bit up and down, but mostly down since essentially since Kirbishley left, and that was a while ago now.
It certainly was. He's been out of football for a long time as well, hasn't he? So let's talk a bit about this potential new owner. You mentioned that Dutchatelet still owns the training ground and the Valley itself. Sandgaard, he seems to be saying all the right things. I've read a few interviews of what he's been saying, but is his bid credible? What do you make of him?
I haven't spoken to him myself. I think the board in general might be speaking to him one day this week, actually, but other members, such as Heather, that have been there a lot longer than I have on the cast board, have spoken to him. And as you say, like, he's saying all the right things. He seems legitimate. He seems professional. Quite a cool guy as well. But he seems serious, and like, he ultimately seems to have a bit of money behind him. Right, and that is, as a Danish guy that he first mentioned, I think in one of his first tweets or first videos or something, he mentioned Dennis Rommedahl, who's very much from that Danish winger we had back in the day, who I think is like one of the fastest footballers ever. At least that's what I tell all my friends.
Fastest Charlton player ever, probably.
He was 20 out of 20 on FIFA, mate. Anyway, so must be doing something right. But yeah, so Sandgaard, he seems serious. He's saying all the right things. But I think our concern is that so did Matt Southall. Right, Matt Southall did everything right in terms of building up a persona for himself, and like photos with the kids at the ground, going to all the games, which is something Dutchatelet didn't do. And like, young guy, like clearly keen to, like, what seemed keen to be like part of the future of Charlton and lead by example, and then that all fell to pieces. So I think the situation with Sandgaard is, and it's absolutely not a knock on him whatsoever, and I think he realizes that as well, is that we as Charlton fans have like had our fingers burnt a few too many times now, and so at least the majority of us are now a bit more apprehensive, however good someone may seem, like, until the ink is dry, I suppose, and even after it's going to take a while to fully convince us all. But yeah, for sure that we're behind him, and that's the bid that we're hoping succeeds.
So do we know what stage that bid is actually at? Has it been accepted? Has there been any discussions between the parties? Where are we actually at right now?
As far as we know, it's in at least a reasonably advanced stage, and like, he's now very vocal on Twitter and on socials and such. Of course, it can't give all the details away, but it seems promising. At least it seems promising. I guess the only concern for us is, as you said at the start, like the new season is very much almost upon us. And whilst we've actually signed a couple of players, and Bo is still there and such, which I think is, for us as fans, the most important thing, it's still like the season is very nearly here, and like, we have to play a game in Crewe in, when is it? Is it 2 weeks' time?
2 weeks. Soon. That is incredibly soon. So it seems quite promising, of course, that bid. That is obviously the one Charlton fans want to go through. But as more of a general thing, I think with the Football League, especially this season more than ever, we've seen Bury not even be able to play their games, go out of the Football League. We've seen Wigan essentially be kind of run out of the Championship with that 12-point deduction. For you and for the board, what do you think needs to happen with the Football League?
I mean, the same thing everyone's been saying for a while, right? Is that how some of these people, like Farnell, so Chris Farnell, who was involved for a brief time, but longer than we'd have liked with Charlton, same guy that was involved with Bury. Like he was the lawyer there, and he was involved in things there when it fell to pieces, which is again a tragedy, right, for English football. And then he somehow is then allowed to jump into bed at Charlton as well. And so I just think there needs to be a lot more processes put in place, or maybe just more just better processes put in place in terms of research on who these people are before they're allowed to buy football clubs. Because ultimately it's not, might sound a bit cheesy, but football clubs aren't just businesses, are they? Like they're communities. They're the cornerstone of some communities. Like that's what families do on a Saturday. That's what brings everyone together. That's what people go and see. And like of course I'm biased, but I think that some of the work that Charlton has done and does in terms of the community trust, LGBTQI stuff. I think we were one of the first pro teams with an affiliated club in that regard. What they do with the Upbeats, like another one of their teams, amazing stuff. And like that's what football is ultimately about, right? Like we all love going to watch it on a Saturday, but it's so much more than that. And so allowing any crook or dodgy person or otherwise, whoever seems to be anyone with a few quid literally to their name seems to be able to get their claws into these football clubs. And if changes aren't made, like Charlton might be the biggest for a while, but certainly won't be the last. And that's the main thing. That's why the protest, again, it was amazing. Like there was a Brighton fan there. I think someone had come down from, might have been Northampton, somewhere like that. Like pretty amazing. Somewhere else quite far away. But that's the thing. Like everything we're saying now is, of course, it's about Charlton. Like we're all fans of this club, but ultimately it's about the state of English football and like the fact that it could happen to any club realistically.
Another added question on that is: do you think the obviously you're in League One now? Do you think the wage cap is a positive move?
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, it's not something I've looked into too much, to be honest, on that front. I've been very wrapped up in all of this. But yeah, someone messaged me about the other day. What is it? And I'll make a snap decision now.
It's 2.5 million for League One clubs for wages and 1.5 million for League Two. And I think most clubs are spending over that. But I think Chairman Peterborough's been talking about it, having to sell like Ivan Toney and stuff like that. But it's a case of you just pay the players you use, and the contracts you've already agreed don't actually count towards that, or a certain portion. So I think it will come into effect more over the next couple of years rather than perhaps this season. But certainly clubs like Charlton and Sunderland, what they've been doing in League One to not be promoted is the wages they've been spending has been ridiculous. So it's probably a club like that which will feel it more. But for Charlton, I think with them going down, it is just a bit more of a sensible thing. Obviously, Wigan are selling all of their players as well. I think it's probably a good thing in the long term.
This is it. And again, like right now, right, like obviously with this has all been happening at Charlton, at Wigan, at Bury, and like all of this as well with the backdrop of COVID and the pandemic, and we don't know for how long that will impact football clubs, right? And for the Prem can probably keep up in terms of media rights and broadcast deals internationally. We can't, of course we can't. Like League Two clubs, League One clubs, it's the pies that make the money, right? Like it's the match day stuff that makes a lot of the money. And so if we can't do that for a prolonged period and we don't know for how long, that's of course, that's a huge concern for numerous clubs, I'm sure, throughout the UK. And
yeah, I think potentially the only concern with that is the gap between the Championship and League One is just going to become even bigger. So let's finish this off really with, it's been great speaking to you, but do you think in your heart, a gut decision, what does your gut tell you at the moment? Do you think Charlton will be a Football League club in a couple of months? Because that's how serious this is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so, truly. Like I spoke for a minute or two on Saturday at the protest and said the same thing. Like, I guess maybe that's naivety that, you never think it can happen to your club, right? Like even when it comes down to the crunch. But I really don't like the amount of noise that's being made on socials. Like you go to the ground and you see the Valley for what it is. You look at the history of Charlton, like how close it's come before and how the fans came out fighting then. I think the weight of the fan base, the extent of the fan base as well, and the friends we have, and hopefully with Thomas coming in, we should be okay.
He can be the saviour.
Check me up on that in a couple of months.
For sure. And we'll finish one last question. What are like the next steps, not only for Charlton Athletic, but the Supporters Trust as well?
So it is worth noting as well that we've been running the Our Club campaign, it's called, for a while now, which has amassed, I think, 5,000 and something signatures. And that essentially is a hands up for if it comes to the fact or comes to a point at which we might need to do a fan-led crowdfunding campaign. That's the first people that we will go to make that call and to make that push. So essentially, we are ready to go on that if for whatever reason Thomas's bid doesn't work out, or if it's needed regardless. Like we're ready to pull that trigger. So that's the other thing that we're working a lot on at the moment. And more broadly than that, speaking to people like yourself and other members of the media, just to better spread awareness and better spread the word of what is happening.
It's a very important message, a very important club in the Football League as well. But thanks very much for answering my questions today, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely no problem whatsoever. So that's it for this video, guys, on Empty Seats. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this one, and stick around for next week where I'll be putting up my Championship League 1 and League 2 predictions. But that is it for me, guys. I'll see you on the next one.